Welcome back everyone to the Formula E Show episode 3. It's been quite a while, I think, let's be perfectly honest. It seems ages since the last episode of the Formula E Show. If you're not aware, exam period, busy time for me at the moment, and so the Formula E Show's been on the back burner a little bit, but I'm thinking in my head some restructuring that's going to go on with the channel. A change of channel name should be coming soon as well. I'm brainstorming a few ideas as well. A few new series, a big change to the channel schedule, but the Formula E Show will be the focus for myself and the channel going forward. That's what I've got in my head as well. I love doing this show. I've said before that by around episode 5 I'm hoping to get a few guests on, getting a big more sort of group conversation, but at the moment I just want to have a bit of there's still sort of the test phase of this podcast, if you will, what I like about it, what I dislike, and your thoughts on the podcast. So, week 1, we laid out what was going to happen with the podcast. Week 2, we did sort of a full episode all about what I want for Formula E, what I think Formula E should be, and the future of Formula E. Week 3, I'm just going to do a pretty basic week of covering the news, all of the goss, a little bit of a race review as well, since we last did a Formula E show. So guys, let's just crack on with the show. So, the formalities are out the way. Today, what I really want to cover is first the Paris E-Prix, then the Berlin E-Prix, and then we've had a few announcements here and there, up and down the field, a few driver changes, a few team changes for next season as well. So that's sort of the content of today's Formula E show. What I usually try and do is aim to be around half an hour to an hour sort of length episodes, so I have no idea how long this is going to be. I have no idea at what point my voice is going to give up on me, but that is the plan for this week. So we might as well start off then with the Paris E-Prix. Now, it was quite some time ago, and so I can't quite remember everything that went on, but I do remember it was a pretty snooze fest from the Paris E-Prix, to be perfectly honest with you. A very strange looking track. You can see in the background there of the Formula E show thumbnail this week, we have the pit lane for the Paris E-Prix. Very strange, to be perfectly honest with you, but a snooze fest. It was a great looking event through the streets of Paris, the Eiffel Tower in the background, the home straight under the tree cover. Fantastic looking, but the track itself was a bit odd, the layout of the track. Restricted overtaking pretty much only to that start-finish straight. It was a Jean-Eric Vergne domination, which we don't see too often, dominations in Formula E, but the Jean-Eric Vergne formula, Jean-Eric Vergne season 4, this was just a complete sum up of Jean-Eric Vergne's season, to be perfectly honest with you. Fantastic race from the Parisian. He's from Paris, and to win his home Grand Prix is what most drivers want in their careers, and he's done it. He's ticked that box off pretty early on in his Formula E career. Pole position, race win, absolutely commanding victory. That's all that can be said there, really. Second was Lucas di Grassi. Only picked it up late on. In the early stages, it was Sam Bird and Andre Lotterer that was sort of fighting for that second position. Both used up energy fighting each other, which meant di Grassi was able to pass both of them and take second place. Bird consequently slipped back into 4th place behind Lotterer, and it wasn't until the final sort of corners that di Grassi and Lotterer were sort of scrapping a little bit, but di Grassi managed to get past Lotterer on the final lap after some very questionable defensive manoeuvres from Lotterer. I want to talk about that in a sec. But on the final lap, on the final corner, Lotterer runs out of energy. Bird slams right into the back of him. Lotterer isn't out, but he's missing like the rear end of his car. Bird's only got 3 tyres left, comes across the line in 3rd with only 3 tyres. Absolute carnage on the final corner. And yeah, that was the biggest sort of drama of the Paris E-Prix. Engel managed to obtain 4th as well, so Maro Engel very happy there. Driver of the day for me was Daniel Abt. He didn't really finish, I think it was 6th he finished, so not a crazy finishing position. Started off lower down in the top 10. Had a fantastic overtaking race and was the key focus of the on-track drama. So that was the sort of rundown of what happened in the race. But There's a few things that I wanted to take away from this race, and one of them was, I think, the star of the season, Daniel Abt, really showed again in this particular race that he is a top driver in Formula E. And to be honest, the first 3 seasons, I was one of the people questioning if he should have his seat in Formula E. He was nowhere near the pace of Lucas di Grassi in the first 3 seasons. This season, you have to bear in mind that Lucas di Grassi had an awful start to the season. It was so bad. I think it took him 5 or 6 races to even get any points. So, in that perspective, perhaps, well, Audi do have one of the best cars on the grid, perhaps the best. And so, Abt himself, or Abt, sorry, should be winning races, in theory. But this year, to me, he's proved that he's as good as Lucas di Grassi, something that we've not seen throughout his Formula E career so far. And this race, like I said, for me, really put him on the map in terms of top Formula E drivers. On the other hand, we have Andre Lotterer. Now, they arguably have a consistent car that is winning races in the hands of Jean-Eric Vergne. Jean-Eric Vergne's smashing the championship, and at this point in the season as well, in terms of the Paris-Prix we're on about now, he's miles ahead of Lotterer. Lotterer has had 2 podiums, I believe, 1 points finish, and apart from that, nothing. And the Paris-Prix was another example of how not to drive. Some awful defending, double moving in the braking zone. Lotterer, he's a DTM driver and WEC driver and Le Mans winner. But for some reason, in single-seaters, seems to be a bit dodgy. He's an absolute professional, like I say, in WEC, in endurance racing, an absolute top driver. But in Formula E, I've not been impressed at all. Too many times we've seen mistakes, we've seen dirty driving. I don't like to say that very often, but he is a bit of a dirty driver in Formula E. And Lotterer, I was not impressed with in this particular weekend. Further down the grid, we had some poor performances from the usual Andretti team, Dragon team, Neo team. Very inconsistent, those 3 teams, to be perfectly honest with you. And this weekend was just another example of that. We had Venturi getting a 4th place. That was pretty much out of nowhere with Mauro Engel. That midfield is an absolute mess in Formula E. It's so hard to sort of work out the running order of the teams, but that is something that I love about Formula E. You can show up one weekend and in the next weekend be absolutely nowhere. This is a weekend that Mahindra once again were absolutely nowhere. I want to focus on them just for a second. Mahindra at the beginning of the season won the 2nd race, were very close to winning the opening race with Felix Rosenqvist. Had chances to win in Mexico City. We are the clear favourites to win there throughout the race as well, until his car broke down. The same in Rome. Felix Rosenqvist leading until his car broke down, and I think he'll be moving on next season. Unless he's under contract, I think Rosenqvist should move on. I think he should. I think he should be looking for another drive somewhere. I don't think he'll find that at Audi. He could find that at Nissan alongside Sebastian Buemi. I know there's been reports saying that Prost will be staying with Buemi at Nissan when Nissan take over Renault. But Prost has been awful this season. Paris, again, his home race, dreadful, diabolical season he's had, considering he was the pole man in the first 2 races of Formula E. In that first season, was fighting for the title most of the way through. Now he's a shadow of his former self. He really is an embarrassment to himself, and it's such a shame, but he's lost his mojo, and it's time for him to move on, unfortunately, or look for a new challenge. And I don't think Formula E is that challenge, unfortunately, and I could see Rosenqvist moving to Nissan. I think he needs that. Mahindra having a pretty good car this year, to be perfectly honest with you, but recently it's been a dog, and reliability-wise, it's been one of the worst cars in the entire field, to be perfectly honest with you. Such a disappointment from where they started the season off, and to be perfectly honest with you, they should have taken advantage of that awful start from Audi, from Lucas di Grassi, and they've not been able to do it. He's now slipped back nearly 100 points as of the Berlin E-Prix, away from leader Jean-Eric Vergne. He's not got a podium since round 3. Since round 3, he's not had a podium, which is ridiculous. Round 2, round 3, he won. After that, nothing. To be honest, I'm looking at his points now. After round 3, his highest place finishes have been 4th, but then pretty much after that, it's been absolutely diabolical. The last 3 rounds, he's had 3 points, 4 points, and 0 points. So 7 points in total in the last 3 rounds. Not acceptable. Not acceptable at all for Felix Rosenqvist. And actually, interestingly, 2 of the races this season he's had 3 points, and that's been because he's had pole position and then DNF'd. I mean, that's just such a shame, to be honest with you, Felix Rosenqvist. He deserves better. I'd love to know where you guys think he should be next season. Should he be alongside Sam Bird at DS Virgin? Should he be Jean-Eric Vergne's teammate at Techeetah? There's that place, like I said, alongside maybe Sebastian Buemi at Nissan. And also Jaguar, they seem to be making a bit of a push. Not recently though, the last few Grand Prix, or E-Prix, I apologise, have been dreadful, especially for Piquet Jr. But they're on the rise. So, big times, big decisions for Rosenqvist ahead. Mahindra, if they want to keep pushing for championships, they're going to have to keep a hold of their golden boy. And with only 3 rounds to go, the World Championship seems all set and done. So that was the Paris E-Prix. Like I said, Jean-Eric Vergne winning there. Now I'm going to quickly just talk about the Berlin E-Prix. Absolute domination once again from Daniel Abt this time. Pole position, race win, fastest lap, the full 29 points, the full Pazam. Great stuff for Daniel Abt. Like I said, if Paris didn't put him on the map, Berlin did. A faultless weekend. Question marks about whether he'd keep his pole position after a potential penalty, but they didn't give it to him in the end. Gave him his 2nd win, or his 3rd win really, of the season. His 1st win, eventually he was disqualified for some stupid logistic error where a part was named incorrectly. It's something ridiculous like that, and he lost out on his 1st ever win. But this season, he picks up his 2nd official win here this weekend in Berlin. It was the 2nd ever 1-2 in the sport for Formula E, the 1st ever for Audi. Abt and for Lucas di Grassi coming home in his 4th second place in a row. His 4th, that's ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. The first 4 rounds, Lucas di Grassi had no points. The 5th round in Mexico, I believe it was there, he got last place in the points, so 10th, and fastest lap. Since then, he's only had 2nd place. So since his car's actually been good and reliable, he's only had 2nd place. And Lucas di Grassi is another one that could be driver of the season. You look at his form since the Mexico E-Prix, he's scored the most points. He's been the only driver to be on the podium every single time since the Mexico E-Prix. I know that's a bit of a strange stat and you can't really use that, but he's done it. He's always been there, and Lucas di Grassi now sits in 6th in the championship. He's only 10 points off 3rd. He's only 10 points off Felix Rosenqvist, so a really great comeback drive at the moment from Lucas di Grassi, and he's really trying to push on now. He is out of the title hunt now, unfortunately. There are still 4 guys in it, but realistically there's only 2 left. In 3rd place was Jean-Eric Vergne in the Berlin E-Prix, so he'll be happy with that, but again, he just needs to keep clocking on points now, keep going for these final races. Be like a Nico Rosberg was in the 2016 F1 Championship. Don't think about the championship, just think about that weekend. And he's doing that, he's consistently scoring points. His lowest place finish this season has been 5th. He's got a monstrously fantastic record this season. A 2nd place, a 4th place, a 5th place, a win, a 5th place, a win, a 5th place, a win, a 3rd place. So he's been ridiculously consistent this season, and that's why he's at the top of the standings. The 2nd place guy in the season, Sam Bird, hasn't been as consistent. a win, a 5th place, a 3rd, a 5th place, a DNF, a 3rd place, a win, a 3rd place, and then only 6 points scored in Berlin. A difficult weekend for Sam Bird. Big talking points from this race, like I said, Audi domination. That is the big thing here. Like I said earlier, after the Paris E-Prix, you don't expect to see domination in Formula E. You really don't. And so it's good to see a little bit. It's good to see. And Daniel Abt, obviously, the 2nd home race winner in a row, which is great. Great to see again. I love it when drivers can win their home E-Prix. And Daniel Abt in a German car, Audi's home E-Prix as well. A very, very special day for them as a team. Sebastian Buemi had probably one of his better races, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, in Berlin. His 2nd or 3rd best result of the season, I believe it is, with a 4th placed finish. Buemi, I've said before on this sort of show, he's not my favourite driver. He really wasn't, and the way he handled the championship loss last season was horrible to witness. That was horrendous sportsmanship. I think it put a lot of people off. I wasn't, like I say, the biggest fan anyway, but it really put me off. This season, he's been a lot calmer. He's had a much more difficult situation to deal with in that Renault team, and he's growing on me a little bit. He is a little bit. He's not won a race this season. Yeah, it's the first ever season that Sebastian Buemi has not won a race. His biggest chance, I think, this year was in Marrakesh, where he came 2nd to Felix Rosenqvist. That was his only chance. It's got to be said, that was his only chance for the big win this season, and he'll be looking next year and hoping that next year his fortunes can turn around a bit. I'd love to know what you guys think of Sebastian Buemi. I really would. He's one of those love him or hate him Marmite sort of drivers, but this weekend he did a solid job, and it was sort of the Buemi of old, I think, that we can happily say this weekend. And it was nice to see, actually, that he was almost fighting at the front, but still, I think he was quite a bit behind Daniel Abt, who won the race. Still on the same lap, all the top 5 were on the lap 45, but still, I think he was 18 seconds behind Daniel Abt. Let me just quickly, there we go, 17.2 seconds behind Daniel Abt, so that's a pretty monstrous gap, considering this guy has been fighting for the championship every season so far, and he's in the team that have won every Constructors' Championship. So next year when Nissan come in, that's going to be when Buemi really wants to take control of the championship once again. In 5th place for the Berlin E-Prix was Oliver Turvey, someone who has really come on the radar this season. Past seasons been a bit hidden at the back of the grid, I think we can happily say, a bit sort of in no man's land. But to be honest with you, this year he's been really impressive. Ever since Mexico, where he got that first podium, looked like he could have got a win in Mexico. But since then he's been very consistent, and he's now heading towards those top positions in the championship. Still not ridiculously close, but he's not that far off either. I think he's currently sitting around about 7th, I believe it is. I'll just quickly pull up the driver's standings, but he's been really impressive this year. He's actually 9th, I apologise. He is 6 points off 7th, so he's just behind the 2 Jaguar boys, but he's been really impressive. He's ahead of the likes of Andre Lotterer, Eduardo Mortara, Mauro Engel, Nick Heifeld, Alex Lynn, Nicholas Prost, ahead of all those guys, so he's been really impressive this year, has Oliver Turvey, and in a car that should not be fighting at the front, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I know it's been difficult with his teammate, Luca Filippi, who came back this weekend. We had Mark King, who did a race in Paris. Didn't even get going off the start line, a dreadful race for him. So we had Luca Filippi back this weekend, still no points again. His only point was in that very first round in Hong Kong. That's 1 point to his name, so difficult times for Luca Filippi, but Oliver Turvey has been showing the potential of that car, even though I believe it's not the greatest car. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was sniffing around other teams next season. Maybe Techeetah, maybe that could be a good destination for him. Maybe Mahindra, if Felix Rosenqvist moves on. Maybe Nissan as well. But I'm probably going to do a predictions for drivers in another podcast, but today I just wanted to mention Oliver Turvey. I was very impressed with him in Berlin, but overall, Berlin and Paris, not the best races, to be honest with you. And in Formula E, we're used to seeing some pretty carnage races, but these two were pretty quiet, so I can't give them high scorers. So I think what I'm going to do is going to give Paris a 6 out of 10, and I'm going to give Germany, Berlin, a 7 out of 10. I preferred it that a little bit more, even though it was, again, a complete domination. We did see some great moves further down in the pack. Felix Rosenqvist, who started fairly high up, went for an all-or-nothing move into that first corner and pretty much threw away the race. We saw Jerome D'Ambrosio have a fantastic qualifying. If you don't know, Lotus, my favourite team in Formula 1, Jerome D'Ambrosio did that one-off race for Lotus, so a little bit of alliance there for him. Though in Formula E, I wouldn't say he's one of my favourites, but he did a really good job in qualifying, but in the race, that Dragon car just fell off the pace completely. Complete shambles with the strategy, and D'Ambrosio, that was a good chance for good points there. A good chance, actually, to get ahead of his teammate. So, very close for those two. I think there's 2 points difference between D'Ambrosio and Lopez, but both of them came away from this race with 0 points. We saw some great moves from both Mahindra boys, Felix Rosenqvist, who I mentioned a minute ago, and Nick Heidfeld, working their way around that midfield. Maranello and Eduardo Mortara, pretty quiet races for those two. Andre Lotterer as well. We saw Jose Maria Lopez and Felix Rosenqvist touch contact in the closing laps as well. And Piquet Jr. had a pretty solid race, to be honest with you, working his way up the field, then decided, you know what, I'm just going to go straight on at turn 1, completely locked up, lost all his positions, and that's the third 0 points scored in a row. Fourth actually, fourth in a row. I apologise, it's his fourth. He's had 3 DNFs in a row, and this one was his 4th no points in a row. Blimey, it's not going well, is it, for Piquet Jr.? And he is someone that I have been critical of in the past as well. I don't really know why. I honestly think he came to Jaguar expecting to be the outright number 1. And I think he's not used to a teammate battering him. Or, well, that's okay. That was a very strong statement because they're only 6 points difference. But I don't think he's used to the close challenge. And I think that's why he's having this bit of a rut at the moment. He's getting frustrated with the team. I imagine he came to the team expecting to be the outright number 1. And he's not. So, a bit of tension there with Jaguar. But like I say, I think he's not the best sportsman, Piquet Jr. I don't think he acts in a professional manner like other drivers do. And personally, I'd like to see someone else in that Jaguar seat. But I've got to put my hands up. He is a Season 1 World Champion. And so that does carry some weight with it, having a World Champion in your car. So I think there's a pretty balanced lineup at Jaguar with Evans and Piquet Jr. Evans had a pretty solid race, dicing up again in that midfield, just behind the likes of Turvey and Buemi, picking up 8 points. Pretty solid. He's been consistent all season, has Mitch Evans. His highest was a 3rd place. Well, it wasn't really a 3rd place, an inherited 3rd place in that second race. He's also had a 4th place, but apart from that, a couple of 6th places. Just been a pretty consistent, slowly scoring points, but I don't imagine it'll be anything more than 7th and 8th for the Jaguar boys in the championship. So that rounds up, really, the French Grand Prix, or E-Prix. I still need to get used to calling it an E-Prix. The French E-Prix and the Berlin E-Prix. It's been 4 years now, and I still call it a Grand Prix. It's very, still catching me out. Hey-ho, we move on. Races out the way. Like I said earlier, we've got some driver changes and some team news as well a little bit. So, let's start off then with the driver changes. Since we last spoke, we've had Stefan Sarrazin come back into Formula E. You might have remember him from previous seasons. He came in for maybe a one-off race. We're not really too sure. But he has stepped in for the Andretti team alongside Antonio Felix da Costa. That meant Tom Blomqvist was out. We also saw Tom Dillman come in for Venturi. He was alongside Maro Engel this weekend. Eduardo Mortara was off doing some racing in, I believe, DTM. I think it was. I want to say it was DTM. It was something that crossed over and he decided to do that instead. So they had Tom Dillman step in for that one-off race, and he was actually, despite not scoring any points, just off, he was actually really impressive, to be honest with you. He's been in Formula E before, not for a full season, but he has been in Formula E, and in this race, he looked better than both Engel and Mortara, in my opinion, for Venturi, so he's definitely someone they're going to have to consider for next season. It's already a very difficult sort of scenario for them, because we know that they're not going to retain their driver lineup, because we had the big news this month that Felipe Massa would be joining Formula E from next season onwards. Season 5, the Gen 2 cars, Felipe Massa will be joining Venturi for at least a 3-year deal. Wow, what a bombshell this was. We were expecting this, to be honest with you, we were expecting this, but not so soon, not so quickly, and personally, I didn't expect for Venturi. I think they'd have been one of the lower teams I would have expected Massa to go with. I've said before, I thought he would have been a really good fit for Mahindra, really good at taking over that place from Nick Heifeld, who's aging a bit now and not really producing those sort of results. Also Nissan as well, he'd have been a great fit alongside Sebastian Buemi, both in Formula 1 before, and also Buemi can teach Massa a little bit about Formula E just to get him into it a little bit, because Massa's probably, I imagine, the same age as sort of Sebastian Buemi, so would be an interesting dynamic to see there for sure. But Massa undoubtedly will be the team leader, I'm pretty sure. It's very difficult in Formula E because he'll be new to Formula E, a rookie in Formula E, but I still imagine he'll be seen as the team leader. I don't really know. I would love to know some of your thoughts on that, and I'd love to know as well who you think they should keep, Eduardo Mortara or Mauro Engel. Mortara has had 6 points in one race, 4 points in one race, and 1 point in one race. The other race he got second. So, interesting indeed. Engel has had 4 races where he scored no points. The rest of them, his best place finish has been a 4th place, which was in Paris. So, both of them, very inconsistent. And Mortara, who nearly won his 2nd ever race in Formula E, since then has had 5 points. So after that first weekend, where he managed to pick up a mighty 24 points, he's had 5 since then. So he's been really inconsistent, and Engel started the season off poorly, but he's now on a run of 4 races in a row with points. So it's very difficult for them. But like I said, Dillman really impressed me. Engel, I believe, is linked with Mercedes team. Same with Mortara. I think they both have Mercedes links throughout their history, throughout DTM and other sort of areas of motorsport. I'm not 100% sure. Engel definitely is. And so they could always jump ship and move to the Mercedes team that are coming in a couple of seasons' time. But I don't know. I don't know who I'd pick. I think, to be honest with you, after Dillman's performance, I would go Massa and Dillman, to be honest with you. I really would. He really did impress me. And again, it's unlikely he'll have another race this season. But, like I said, really, really impressed me this weekend. And I'd love to see more of Tom Dillman in Formula E. However, his previous encounters with the sport haven't been the best. This is probably his best race I've seen him drive in Formula E. So, definitely an interesting talking point there. But Felipe Massa, I've said this 1,000 times, Formula E, the next step they need to make. They're doing everything right with the marketing, everything right with the racing, the events, the teams, the cars. All they need now is the marquee drivers, the big names. Big names in the world of motorsport, most notably Formula 1, because they have the biggest fan base. You could also be looking at the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, trying to persuade the big names from across the globe. So you could look at Will Powers just won the Indy 500, but you could also look at the likes of Alexander Rossi, Joseph Newgarden, some from NASCAR, Chase Elliott. Those sort of people who, yes, they're dedicated to their sports, but if they made a big move over to Formula E, that gets people talking, and that's what they need now. They need these big names to come in, to get the fans in, and then they can build their own superstars. And Felipe Massa, I think personally he is their first big name to come into the sport. Yes, we had Buemi and Degrassi when it first started off. Buemi probably was their biggest name. Piquet Jr. as well, probably for not the right reasons. He was one of their biggest names. Since then, we've seen Jean-Eric Vergne the championship leader, most likely to be Season 4 winner. He is probably the biggest name, I would say, in Formula E. Either him or his teammate, Andre Lotterer, Le Mans winner, DTM racer, endurance car, WEC, believe, world champion. So he is a big name, and probably I'd say Andre Lotterer, who has raced in Formula 1 as well for that one-off race, he's probably one of the biggest names. I would say those two, Nick Heidfeld as well. Those three, I would say, are the three biggest names. Then, like I said, you've got the likes of Buemi, Di Grassi, Nico Prost. They're the sort of names that are mixed in. You've also got Kobayashi, obviously a podium-sitter driver from Formula 1. So you've got some sort of C-list sort of drivers from Formula 1, Lotterer as well. And then you've got other drivers that are pretty much unknowns in the world of Formula 1 that have been taken out of lower categories, your Formula 2s, your Formula 4s, your Formula 3s, your GP3s, and sent straight to Formula E. So don't get mad at me, but these guys pretty much did go that route. So you got Felix Rosenqvist is the big example there. Sam Bird, Daniel Abt, Mitch Evans was a big star in GP2. And I believe it when it was last season of GP2, fighting with Stoffel Vandoorne. But he moved over to Formula E because there was no Formula 1 seats, and he's done quite well, to be honest with you. You've also got guys like Oliver Turvey that have come over to Formula E. Alex Lynn, both in Formula 2, or GP2 as it was known, just like Mitch Evans, just like Rosenqvist, couldn't get in Formula 1 and so have moved over to Formula E. But moving on back to Massa, he is their first big name. He is their first almost Formula 1 world champion, Formula 1 winner, actually. No one in Formula E has won a Formula 1 race, so Massa is the first one to do that. Being a Ferrari driver, being in Formula 1 for as long as he did, this is huge for Formula E. I've been telling everyone this is what Formula E needs. And Massa decided to join Venturi, which is great for them. This will put them on the map for sure. So great marketing done by Venturi to sign him up. I'm really happy with this. I really am happy. I will be supporting Massa. There has been footage, I will put it in the description below, of Massa testing the Venturi car, and it's really surreal. It really is, seeing that classic Felipe Massa green helmet in a Formula E Gen 2 car. It really is. It's great to see. Very similar to how surreal it was seeing Nico Rosberg drive the Gen 2 car. If you didn't know, if you weren't aware, at the Berlin E-Prix, Nico Rosberg, Formula 1 world champion, tested and revealed to the public for the first time the Gen 2 car. And he was loving it. He did sort of a commentary throughout the whole thing. He's getting into YouTube at the moment as well. He's got a big following already, which isn't a surprise because he's obviously a world champion. But fantastic to see that Formula E can have the pull of a Formula 1 world champion. Now, I'm going to just say it now, which is probably pretty hypocritical of me, but I wasn't impressed that Rosberg was the one who drove the Formula E car. I think that was the wrong move, to be honest with you. I think those honours should have gone to last year's world champion, or someone who is the future of Formula E, the current world champion or championship leader, someone like that, as Jean-Eric Vergne, Lucas Di Grassi, Sebastian Buemi, someone who's in Formula E. Now I know, again, like I say, this is a very difficult thing. With an actual Formula E drive for a season like Massa is, I think that's great. That brings in the people, but I think this particular time, let a Formula E driver do it. I don't... that probably is a bit hypocritical of me, but I think for the future of Formula E, you have to sort of let the Formula E guys do their stuff. And letting a Formula 1 driver test out the car, I wasn't a huge fan of. Though it was great to see Rosberg, and I have said in the past I'd love him to come to Formula E and partner Pascal Wehrlein in that Mercedes seat. After he tested the car, despite saying how great it was, he said he had no plans to come into Formula E, but every driver's always going to say that. So fingers crossed, hopefully Rosberg comes over to Formula E in a couple of seasons' time when Mercedes join. But going back to Massa, this is huge. This is huge, and if Rosberg did get the seat, I think that would be the next big step. If I was being perfectly honest with you, I think it's finding a world champion to get in Formula E. So you're looking at your Rosbergs, your Raikkonens. I don't think Hamilton would go to Formula E. I don't think Vettel would. I think perhaps Alonso. I think Alonso could go to Formula E. Everything would have to line up, of course. I think that would be key there. Maybe if Toyota joined and Alonso was still in the Toyota partnership for the WEC. Maybe if McLaren ever thought about making a Formula E team, he'd consider coming over as well. So I think that's something to look out for. And I think those would be the names that would put Formula E on the map. Just look at IndyCar last year when Fernando Alonso went over. Blimey, how many people did that put the IndyCar on the map for them? Same as this year. Le Mans, how many more people are going to watch Le Mans because Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button is in it? I think Jenson Button, actually, I completely forgot about Jenson. I apologise for any Jenson fans. He could easily come over to Formula E. He'd be a great fit. He's currently doing Japanese Super Formula, or Japanese Super GT, I apologise. He's currently leading the championship as well, I'm pretty sure, with the Honda team, with the Honda NSX. So he could easily come over to Formula E, but I think they need that big name now. Massa, I think, is a big name to Formula 1 fans, but to people who are casual Formula 1 fans, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much. So, yes, like I say, I have mentioned, I know, and I'm 100% aware that Ferrari driver, almost world champion, multiple race winner, Felipe Massa, is a big name. But I'm just thinking now, just put yourself in this situation. I'm sure you've got friends and family who aren't really big motorsport gurus, aren't really the kind of people who sit down and watch Formula 1 or any form of motorsport, Formula E, religiously, week in, week out. Think about them. Would they know who Felipe Massa is? I don't think my friends and family would. I don't think they would. I think they would know a Fernando Alonso, a Jenson Button. Obviously, it depends on where you are around the world, of course, and who are the big drivers in those areas. But here in the UK, I don't think any of my family who don't watch motorsport, even the ones who just come down occasionally for a race, will watch the race. If it's the British Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, they might watch it. I don't think they'd know who Massa is. So I think if they can get a big name that's going to make, I don't know, national news in the sports section, they move over to Formula E, then that's when you know Formula E has made that next big step. And I think it'll happen sooner than later. I really do. I think Jenson Button, after this year in Super GT, he'll be moving on. He's just done an interview today, actually, after he did his test for Le Mans this year, and he was saying how the reason he left F1 was to do all these challenges. So, personal challenges, so Super GT, learning all about that sport, trying to become world champion there. Le Mans as well, learning about Le Mans and wanting to win Le Mans. He can do the Triple Crown if he wants. He can challenge Alonso for it, which definitely would be fun to see. And I'm looking forward to Le Mans just for that reason, actually, this year. I think it'll be great to follow both of those guys. But if they can get someone like that, that would be fantastic for Formula E. And like I say, I can definitely see that happening in the next few years. So before I just leave you today, I just wanted to go through the announcement that Formula E put up on their website just a couple of months ago that sort of went under the radar. It wasn't in the news section, but they announced all 11 teams that were going to be in Formula E by Season 6. So next season is Season 5, and then after that, obviously, we have Season 6. So we do have teams that are already in the sport. We do have teams that are changing names. So, first of all, we have the big name in Formula E, perhaps one of the biggest, Audi. Audi Sport, they're currently known as Abt Audi Sport, but looks like they're just going to be known as Audi Sport. We then move on to BMW AG. Now, it looks like these guys are going to be taking over. They're already in partnership with Andretti, so it looks like they're going to be taking over that Andretti team full time. We then have DS Automobiles. Now, DS Virgin are currently in Formula E, but from next year, it looks like DS are going to be moving to Techeetah. So what happens there then? It's very unclear. this sort of article. I will link it again in the description. Very unclear to what's going on, but just wanted to read it out to you guys to just get your thoughts going. We then have Jaguar Land Rover, who are already in Formula E. Mahindra Racing, who are already in Formula E. We then have Mercedes-Benz, the big name, most likely coming in Season 6. We then have Nexev Neo, obviously they're already in Formula E as well. We then have Nissan taking over from Renault. That's going to be an interesting transition indeed. We then have Penske Autosport. Don't really know a lot about them, so they'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. We then have Porsche AG. Audi versus Porsche. It's back. The big rivalry will be making its way to Formula E, so that's going to be great to see. And finally, we have Venturi. So, lots to look out for in Formula E over the next couple of seasons. Guys, I think that's the point to call it on today. I think we're going to end the Formula E show there. I have mentioned a couple of times in the last couple of videos, obviously it's been a bit scarce at the moment, but I've mentioned this big rebranding I'm planning on doing. And just so you guys know, if you watch the Formula E show, I'm really trying to push Formula E at the moment. So if you enjoyed the podcast and you aren't yet subscribed and you love Formula E as much as we all do here on F1 Reviews, then I'd love it if you subscribed and you stuck around and got involved in the conversations about Formula E. I love talking about Formula E. It's a growing sport, evolving sport, and I think we all want to be part of that journey. So that's the push at the moment, to try and rebrand the channel a bit towards Formula E. So I'm still coming up with a few ideas, and I think in the following couple of days I might not, I don't want to promise anything, but I might put out a video talking about what I want for the future of this channel, because I don't just want to be your standard Formula 1 news channel. I want to bring something special and make my channel unique, because what's the point in doing YouTube if you just copy other people? I'm not saying I do that, but you know what I'm trying to say. I really want to try and just specialise the channel a bit more than it already is. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, my voice is dying, as I knew it would be. It's not quite there yet, but it's almost at breaking point, so I need to go get a drink. But guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been here ages, so thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of different format this week on the Formula E show. We didn't have moving pictures in the background, and the reason I did that was to try and keep it more focused on the talking rather than the pictures. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that. That's your big one. If you want to comment anything, I'd love to know what you think about that. If you want moving pictures and little clips of videos, or you preferred it more in this podcast style, I would love to know. But guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.